Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. There's a lot of momentum around AI and digital transformation, and you hear it across the hallways as I was entering MWC in Qatar for the first time. So it's great to be here. But underlying all this AI and digital transformation, there's one foundational layer which enables all this transformation, which is data centers. My name is Imad Atwi, and before bringing in the panelists, I would like to walk you through a perspective on this foundational asset and then bringing our panelists on stage. Maybe as we strip down the digital economy into three key layers, you have the smart infrastructure, which is around the apps and the services that lays on top the cloud and the trust platforms. And on top of that, there's the hard infrastructure. And this is where your data centers, your connectivity lays. And without data centers, none of this can actually scale. And this is already part of really the national competitiveness and the digital economy of many of the nations. Globally, we're seeing an inflection point in the data center growth. In the next 5 to 10 years, you will have growth close to 3 to 6 times capacity to reach almost 600 gigawatt by some estimates in 2040. This is driven not just by the AI, but by the digital transformation, the increased demand as well in sustainable energy, and what does this imply on the impact on also the national grid, the talent, and the supply chain. What does this mean for MENA? In MENA, we estimate that the growth will reach around 5 to 6 gigawatt by 2030. And this is not just a story of the type of scale, but also the type of the demand that is coming to MENA that's different than the global demand. In MENA, it's mostly also driven by the sovereign clouds, by the national digital transformation agendas that are being driven by the economies and the key markets in the region in that regard. Now, for any data center opportunity, you need to have an ecosystem of enablers to cut across and to change that, translate that vision into reality. So starting from policies and regulations, access to land, permits, renewable power, and ecosystem enablement and orchestration from public and private sector involvement, as well as the infrastructure, supply chain, liquid cooling, and beyond. And without all of that, this is where the difference between nations announcing sort of the supply of data centers versus nations actually delivering on data centers. Good news, MENA is actually have structural advantages. There's access to location and low latency. You can reach almost 60% of the global AI inferencing model from MENA region, which is below 100 milliseconds. You have availability of low-cost energy. You have policy tailwinds from the national governments. You have available and affordable, cheaper land to build the hyperscale campuses, as well as innovation ecosystem and patient capital. Very few regions actually possess all these components. But we're not starting from scratch. Many of the major markets have already gone through great strides in building data center projects, sovereign clouds, as well as announcing JVs and capital into such areas. And this is where, for the first time, the transition is happening with governments from being consumption of or consumers of digital infrastructure into actually producers of digital infrastructure in that angle. Now, to continue this momentum, this is where the MENA needs to actually solve for 4 key fundamentals. The first one is on the frictionless investment environment. So we have the ambition and the sovereign capital. Now we need to translate it into free zones, incentives, and one-stop shop for global capital. We do have the cheap energy. Now we need to make it more accessible, reliable, and AI grade. We do have the location and the strong backbone from the digital connectivity. We have to diversify the routes, increase the capacity of connectivity, as well as provide competitive pricing. And finally, on talent and supply chain, we do have the ideas, the ambition, and the capital. We have to translate them into building the right technical know-hows, into the supply chain and the capabilities in the MENA region. Many players have seen different investment models, from state-led all the way to private-led with national champions. But the message here is simple. The capital flows where governments can actually de-risk some of the market volatility from demand and from incentives, and where operators can scale. In a nutshell, the region has the ambition, has all the different know-hows and the structural advantages. Now we need to build on the foundations to really accelerate the change. With that, I would like to bring on the people that have actually working on the ground to make this vision a reality. So I would like to invite Sunita Botse, the CEO of Syntys, Dr. Fadi Nasser, the Chief Commercial Officer of MISA, and Razwan Al-Haq, who's the CEO of Scalovate. A big round of applause for our panelists. So maybe starting with some of the questions around we hear a lot about the AI optimized infrastructure in the region. From each of your points of view, what does the AI optimized infrastructure mean, and what are the maybe critical enablers or the gaps that you see in the region? So maybe Sunita, you want to kick us off?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here. For us, as a data center developer and operator, AI optimized infrastructure is not only about more compute, it's about building the digital foundation specifically designed for AI workloads and not for traditional IT. So it translates in data center architecture. So for example, I think you touched based on some of the points during your presentation. The first one is about high density GPU compute at scale. In comparison with, let's say, the legacy data centers, they were completely different designs. And if you look at now, they require more power, different type of cooling systems, advanced cooling systems like liquid cooling, rear door heat exchangers, or a hybrid solution. It also requires fast expansion, like modular scalability, in order to reduce redesign cycles. So you have to make sure that, because the AI workloads we're creating a lot of workloads, a lot of data globally. So that means you need to be able to scale in a fast manner. And the last one is more around power, to have pre-committed and guaranteed power for your current workloads, to run your current workloads, as well as your future expansions. And then if I look at the regional gaps, here in the MENA region, each country, they have their ambitions. They have their own national digital agendas, but in order to fast track the progress, in my opinion, there are still some critical gaps that we need to overcome. The first one, and I spoke about it, is the power availability. Right? AI workloads requires 10 to 20 times more power than the traditional workloads. So that means we will need to look at how do we provide faster grid connections, because today in some of the countries you see 18 to 24 months. That's way too long, and that is unacceptable in our industry, because that has an impact in delaying your projects. The second one is, and you spoke about it, is talent shortage. Globally, there is a shortage of around 350,000 to 400,000 skilled staff. Our industry is growing so fast, but there is not a lot of talent entering our industry. So that's also something that we need to focus on. We at Syntys are having extremely challenges in getting the right specialized talent. And then the third one is around sustainability and green power. Look, green power today, it is not an option anymore. It's a must. It's a must that operators secure renewable PPAs, and adopt carbon credit schemes, because hyperscalers, which is our main target group, are committed to green power, and they demand from data center players that they are providing these green solutions in order for them to meet their net zero pathways as well. And I think
Okay.
that's
Okay.
yeah.
No,
those are the
definitely,
gaps.
this is something that definitely is quite interesting, and we've seen it in many regions on power, on availability of the talent and the expertise. Dr. Fadi, maybe your take on the AI optimized infrastructure and some of the gaps that you see in the region and what can be done.
Look, I second everything that Sunita said. You know, the power challenges, the talents, all of these things. I think they're common hindrances or challenges that the region is facing. The world is changing, right? Everybody's trying to get their hands on more power, more land, build data centers faster. To me, efficient AI mimics the late 90s cycle of building just-in-time computing. So I think we went through that on a more limited scale back when CPUs and storage and RAM were the issue, except now with GPUs, the whole thing is more exacerbated. So the issue of GPUs, building AI just in time provides the right balance of how much to build from data centers, how many GPUs to get, and how to get your hands on just enough, maybe with a plus 20%. But if we just get sucked into the hype right now of acquiring more GPUs because we're worried about the supply chain, the global policies, access to power, I need to get them in now, I need to spend a lot of capex, you know, you're missing the boat. You're not exactly building efficient AI. You're just trying to get your hand on as much as possible. And then with the pace of change, these things turn, you know, out of fashion in 2 to 3 years. So if you bought too much ahead of time, that's definitely not efficient use of capex or efficient use of the power that you've delivered. So if you can build it just in time from the data center, the modularization of the data center, the access to power in the right chunks, right? You don't want to build the substation for 80 megawatts and then it's going to take you 3, 4, 5 years to get that consumed, because then that's not an efficient use of the grid. So the land, the modularization of the data center, the power itself, but also in the GPU itself, in the active IT, how much do you need to get, and how do you deploy enough GPU power? Do you need to be single sourced with a leader like NVIDIA? Do you go multi-vendor with, you know, tier 2s and tier 3s as well? So you can churn more GPU power just in time when it's needed. And that thinking has to carry all the way into the use cases, right? We cannot do everything all at once. It's just a massive hit to the balance sheet, every balance sheets, including the trillion-dollar companies out there. So efficient means data center, power, GPUs, software, all in a modular, well-orchestrated manner that you can turn things on and off as they become needed and as there's a call for it.
Yeah. And I guess this is where some of the public and private investors can collaborate to actually build and bridge that modularity into the system instead of
Exactly.
just overflooding the market with either GPUs or some of the infrastructure that are
Exactly.
yeah. You spoke about, you know, the AI use cases, and I turned to Razwan to, you know, from your perspective and looking at the AI optimized infrastructure in the lens that you're building some of the interesting AI use cases based on open source. What are really the key gaps do you see it, and how do you define that optimized infrastructure that you're building on top the use cases?
Thank you. I'll second Dr. Fadi and Sunita here, and I'll add one more component to it because they have mentioned everything. Pretty much that's the cover. But looking from the development company, AI development firm focused on local development and private development, one of the things that we need to add is the networking thing. So at the moment, what we're seeing is network is like north and south, just going towards internet, but nothing local. We don't have anything optimized for east-west or rack-to-rack traffic, which is where it's key for LLM trainings, fine-tuning, and all that, especially when we are building localized systems for the customers here in Qatar, as well as across the region. Focus on the sovereignty of that. So yeah, that's the addition that I would like to put in front, because that's one of the key components.
And what would be some of the enablers that you would want to focus to bridge that, that
So,
gap?
if I may be bold enough to represent all AI companies or AI development firms, what we need right now is a scalable architecture, more flexible open source architectures running on Kubernetes or OpenShift AI stacks, supporting Tensor, PyTorch kind of architectures as well, off the back from the data centers. So that will enable companies like ours to scale AI faster and build more large language models or inference them or even do the MLOps. That should be that's also a necessity that we don't have so far in the region. And also adding to that larger commitment model. So usually what happens if you go to a hyperscaler, we have to do a commitment for the GPUs for 3 years as a startup, and most companies are startups right now. So that is a bit of a blocker there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And maybe back to Dr. Fadi on how the public and private investors can actually work together. You know, you've had the journey of the sort of the IPO. What are the, how can they build the data center that really protects the data, the sovereign data, and remains it sustainable as well in this regard? What are maybe some of the things that might influence such collaboration?
I think we're in the eye of the storm right now, trying to figure out that balance between public and private. Public sector, government entities, they're a big consumer of all things AI, from the security use cases to public safety to tourism to healthcare to education. They're big consumers of all that GPU, all that power, all that AI systems and expenditure in place. So we need them. But then these guys come with a stringent set of requirements for data sovereignty, for data classification, the C3, C4 types of data that should not be led to outside AI platforms, right? They have more needs to run their use cases and workloads on local sovereign AI infrastructure. So they come with the money, they come with the funding, they come with the enablement, but then they put a lot of limitations on how to, build things to cater to those needs. This is where the private sector can come in. We can come in, at the scale of the country, at the scale of the region. We can build systems, the whole stack from the data center. And as a matter of fact, we've built it in Qatar, like our brothers in Saudi and elsewhere in the region. And I think we're working, Synthesis is probably the same thing. I don't want to speak on behalf of our peers, but we're actively building the entire stack in Qatar, from the data center to the OLM, to the LLMs, to the GPUs being present right in Qatar. So as a private entity, we're a publicly listed entity, but private in terms we're not government. We work closely with the government so we can deliver systems that work hand in hand with the government. We're agile because we're a commercially driven company. We have to innovate, to sustain, to grow. We owe this to our shareholders. So we've got the speed element. We can make things happen much faster than a public sector can do. We rely on the public sector for the enablement with the funding and with the regulations. But it's a synergetic relationship at the end of the day.
No, absolutely. And maybe building on that, Sunita, you built Synthesis as a carve-out from Ooredoo to expand into a carrier-neutral, multi-country platform. What are maybe some of the unexpected lessons learned, be it positive or the challenges that you faced while carving out and building Synthesis in this regard?
So yeah, when carving out Synthesis from a telco company, it was both a huge advantage for us, but also, as you mentioned, a lot of challenges and lessons learned. So let me start on the positive side. The positive side is that we did not start from scratch. We inherited a real asset base, client portfolio, as well as good long-standing relationship with the government. We were also able to access Ooredoo's capital, as well as the national infrastructure, which is important. Yeah, and then if you look at the challenges, when you inherit assets that are catered partially for hyperscalers and partially for telco needs, there is a different way in operating these data centers. So when we took over as a Synthes team, we realized that we had to tighten some of our safety protocols, our best practices, as well as focusing on specialized talent, to hire specialized talent that can cater our target group. Because being part at the time from Ooredoo, they were focusing on networking, on infrastructure, on many other things. And we are purely focusing on hyperscalers. So that was also one of our challenges, to hire specialized workforce. But what it enabled for us is the carrier neutrality. So we have, of course, no preference for any carrier, as well as our agility, our speed to market. So we can make our own decisions, because hyperscalers require bespoke solutions. So that's also something that we are now fully focused on. And the second thing is making fast decisions. Time to market is important. And the third one is more around building our footprint as Synthes without being part of a telco company, and operating in an autonomous way.
And
Yeah.
did that enable that multi-country vision,
Yes.
as well as maybe the JV with Iron Mountain
Yes,
that
that's-
you've had on this regard? So you're hosting the sovereign AI cloud for Ooredoo. You're running on the NVIDIA Hopper GPUs.
Yeah.
What were the challenges on setting up, operating, and scaling those areas? Back to what maybe Dr. Fadi was mentioning on bringing them too soon, and how to sort of modularize it as the demand comes in this regard. So that's definitely a challenge we see with many clients and regions globally as well. So
Look, one thing, clients, they don't have patience, right?
Yeah.
So we as an operator and a developer, we have to be really, really patient and act fast. But look, when we were delivering the Ooredoo's sovereign AI cloud, we had many constraints. Why? It was a live site retrofit. So that means that some of our data halls were not designed to host these GPUs. So we had to increase our power capacity, upgrade our distributions, provide different cooling systems, enhance our cooling systems. And at the same time, as I mentioned, Synthes is a young company. So we had to work across multiple teams within our group and pull everybody together to deliver this infrastructure, because time was not on our side. We had to deliver not in years time, but in months. So that was also one of our biggest constraints, and luckily we were able to deliver it. And one of our other constraints and challenges around supply chain. I think all of us that are in the data center business, not only here in the MENA region, but also globally, there is a huge pressure on the supply chain. So we had to be a little bit more creative in our decision making. So switching components from sea to air freight, yeah, it's costly, but we had a tight timeline. So, but all in all, we are quite proud that we were able to deliver this. And we are the most proud on that we delivered it in a live environment. So none of our existing clients were affected. We were able to provide 100% uptime throughout the months where we were doing this upgrade and providing this AI sovereign cloud solution for Qatar.
Okay. And
Yeah.
do you see that, the success that you've had in Qatar can be a launch pad for the wider region in your, go-to market in this regard?
That's definitely our aim.
Okay.
And Synthes has presence today in Tunisia, in Kuwait, and we are exploring now in Oman as well. Ooredoo itself has presence in 9 countries.
Yeah.
So in due course, we might expand beyond these countries.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Sunita. I think you spoke around the speed of delivery, and this is where maybe Dr. Fadi,
Yes, exactly.
you're also demonstrating how local capacity, can be built in a record also 14 months, which is something quite interesting, and hosting Microsoft first cloud region in Qatar. What are the models that you see that can help expedite such, let's say, delivery, be it on PPPs, be it on the private investors, having these AI-ready build models, as we were discussing, on making sure that it's modular enough to keep up with the pace of, demand.
This is our secret recipe. Are we on the air? Or
Yes.
Look, we've been doing data centers since 2008, so 17 years. We've had a lot of time to master the art, and it's more art than science at times, of building data centers. And as Sunita mentioned, as of late, the complexities of, it's no longer about a classical data center with classical data halls. We used to build data halls that would accommodate, half a megawatt to a megawatt, and you would need to host about 200, 220 racks maybe in a data hall. Today, racks can go up to 480 kilowatts per rack. So a 1 megawatt data hall needs to be only 20, 30 square meters versus the old 1,000 or 1,500 square meters. So the design, the layout, the cooling, obviously, the way you can expedite your approach to data centers. And again, we're learning as we go, but we've been doing this for quite some time. A campus approach is best. You don't have to build the whole thing up front. This is part of just-in-time approach to data centers. Same goes for whatever you build. You don't have to fit out the entire data center building, the whole data halls. You don't have to fit everything out to be liquid cooled. Now we're coming out with more enhanced cooling, enhanced air cooling. That's a hybrid of air cooled and liquid cooled. And the combination of the two reduces your capex, enhances the speed to scale, the speed to bring to market more data halls and data center capacity. So it's not just about the supply chain of the GPUs and the modularization of the software and the LLMs. It's also at the construction side, a campus approach, a data hall by data hall, question the, whatever you're hearing today. It's not everything liquid. 2-3 years back, it was about immersion, liquid immersed, right?
Yeah.
And then it became all liquid cooled if you want to go beyond 50 kilowatts per rack. I think right now we're coming to terms with what kind of cooling do we need. Do we need all of the data halls to be liquid cooled? Maybe some are still a good fit for liquid cooled. Others, depending on the types of GPUs that you will be housing in there, enhanced air cooling would be a good enough approach. And maybe some of the data halls will be only for the storage and the networking and the security devices. Those will not be, you're not going to be running 130, 150 kilowatts per rack in that kind of room. So it shouldn't be a uniform approach. It's not a one-size-fits-all from the campus to the building to the data hall to the type of cooling to what goes on inside of the rack. We look at it really as a modular, it's a puzzle that you have to put together based on what you're selling, what you're trying to build, who are your end clients, and go from there.
And how was the ecosystem that you're working with, be it the other stakeholders within Qatar, being orchestrated to deliver on that speed?
So the ecosystem to me in the data center sphere, it's the power, the utility providers, it's the municipalities and the free zones that will help us, expand the allocation of land, the permitting. We struggled at first. I think in the last, since COVID, since 2021 to 2024, it was slow moving. Not everybody understood, this energy behind companies like Misa and our friends in the industry. Why are we pushing for more land and more power? They thought it's just a hype. It's a spike. Give it time. It'll work itself out of the system. But then I think, as the state itself and countries around the world and as sovereign funds started to put hundreds of billions of dollars in this became a fact. So in the last 12 months, we've seen, from grid municipalities to investment agencies, everybody's coming around. We're working in a more holistic manner. We all understand the goal is to turn Qatar and the region into a hub. We have a fantastic opportunity for the next 2 to 3 years to really deliver on this premise. We've got the energy, we've got the tariffs. We need to enable these tariffs to be data center friendly. We need us as an ecosystem to be working in a proper handshake manner. the understanding is there now. We just need to continue to bring us all closer around the same table.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think, your 2023 IPO also opened up a
Yes.
new funding path, especially in a region where it's, governed with sovereign capital and some of the private equity plays. How game changing this you see for Misa, but also maybe for other players in the region that want to raise funds through the IPO story, where we've seen it in other regions in the
Yeah.
US and Europe and the REITs model in many developed markets.
No, this is a fantastic phase shift that happened for us. We went public via an IPO listing in August 2023. Data centers is not it's not a game for the faint at heart. You need to have, bold leadership. You need to have your board behind you, and you need to have the deep pockets. Sunita spoke about the, access to funds. Going public, obviously, we became a 2 billion plus company. Since then, we've had good growth, and we're expecting more growth to come. In case you're interested in buying our stocks, consult with your financial advisor first. But you need to have that because you need to give your suppliers that confidence that you're going to be able to pay them when you're buying hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment, when you're leasing the land for 15, 20, 25 years, when you're negotiating with Kahrama on an 40 or 80 megavolt MVA substation. That kind of expenditure requires a lot of capex from a lot of people, and unless you have unless you demonstrate that confidence and that fiscal capability, you're not going to get served by these guys. They're going to go where the money is. So it was a fundamental point for us. We expected that there's going to be a major growth in the 5 years ahead, and hence, you'd think after the World Cup, from December 2022 to August 2023, that's not enough time to take a company public. It was record time, but we had to do it. Alhamdulillah, we did it because of this. We knew we needed to tap into that confidence, investor confidence, because there's a big mandate that lies ahead.
No, absolutely. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity for many players in the region to really follow suit and build from the ground up and then get the funds from the investors that believe data centers is not a risky asset as it was or a utility, but more a niche specialized asset that can grow with long-term commitments and potential growth. Absolutely. And maybe there's one on this, building on what Sunita and Dr. Fadi mentioned.
Yep.
You're on the other end of the spectrum that is tightly hanging with the enablement from a data center perspective. As you're working across the private AI, the open source models, are the data centers, and you have that space here, truly meeting the needs of the AI use cases at this stage? And feel free to ask tough
Give it to us
questions
straight.
your panelists.
Take guns away from them, please.
Yeah.
Give it to us straight.
Okay. Well, yes and no, to a certain extent, because yes, we're there. We are not there yet. We're getting there, and we're getting there slowly. So, what we expect from the development side and building the sovereign AI platform and applications is majorly a flexibility in order to scale and grow. Flexibility to be, as I mentioned earlier, flexibility to be able to control our expenditure and to, while we are building those models. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's an enterprise customer or it's a small customer, depending on the requirements. But yeah, that's one of the things that is important. And what I still see is a few components that are missing from the overall spectrum is not enough compute availability. The pricing is a little bit opaque when it comes to as us understanding how much it's gonna cost us. So if most of the time we put it on the customer side to actually do the whole training bit. But I'd rather use localized data centers like Misa and Ooredoo and Synthis here to take care of that, which reduces the expenditure from the customer side for them to order their own hardware and wait for 6-9 months, as Dr. Fadi mentioned before. Rather, we have the AI-ready data centers. We just take a stack there and do the whole bit. So yeah, that's one thing. Another thing is the latency bit, and also a little bit of a burst to the outside. So sovereign is, yes, it's important, having everything local, which for a certain quality of data, yeah, that's important. But when it comes to like the international connectivity, so connecting directly to the language models like Hugging Face or Olama's resources and all that stuff. This is where, when it comes to the native capability of the data centers, if these tools are available over there, that would definitely change the game for literally not for just Scale of 8, but for most of the startups across the MENA region. Another point to add is so connectivity between different data centers across the MENA region, not just here. So connecting to Saudi, connecting to Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, all the way to Morocco. So if I just take the population demographics, we're like 6% of the world's population between Morocco and Oman, with 2.3% of data center capacity. So that's huge, like a bit of a shift there, which we need to address. And I think IXPs can lead the way to actually have this centralized connectivity and then scaling out to, because we have got all the bandwidth we need, like lower latencies, as mentioned before, and all that. But at the same time, if you're connected with a sovereign framework, that would be like way more easier for even the companies to collaborate and communicate across the region.
And if you were to take some of the investments, what capabilities would you want to build related to the startups and the enterprises that are on top of the data centers? So aside from building those big platforms of what Sunita and Dr. Fadi were mentioning, capabilities of investments in the enterprises and the use cases, what are maybe some key capabilities that you would want to channel some of these investments to?
The core stack there is talent. When it comes to, because that's where we are suffering here, like getting the top quality talent, where it includes the AI engineers, the data scientists, they're hard to find. And so that's one of the key components of anything when you start building. Infrastructure, yeah, that's available. The rest of the stuff can be built if you have got the right talent in place. So I would put my focus on bringing the talent to Qatar or to the MENA region itself and retaining them to build and scale and grow further. Yeah.
No, I think, and this is where the investments need to flow across the stack, from data centers all the way to the platforms, the LLMs, and the use cases. We hear a lot about the AI native self-healing data centers, maybe something you've touched upon. How close is MENA to this self-healing data centers? What innovations you believe the operators need to have to create that angle? And maybe I'll also open it up for Dr. Fadi and Sunita, if they see it from an operator's perspective, how close it is to for that self-healing.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Actually, running the data center for close to about a couple of years back in my career, it was a small data center, but at the same time, we were able to identify a lot of gaps that were there. And when it comes to self-healing data centers, I think we need to be focused on measuring what's there. So right now what's happening is automation's there for sure with the DCIMs and all. So we know if it's X, then do Y. That's what we have. What we don't have is more like a thought process, the IoT enabled platforms where actually they're looking at the data and they're predicting. So if the fan speed is slow, okay, whether it needs to be replaced or what the problem is. So all of these automations we are still a bit further away. I think globally it's a bit of a challenge, not just in the region, but some data, like for example, Google, they have done a fantastic job. And so that's they're actually running on that, and they're reducing through AI and MLOps. So that's one side. The other side is enhancing the network and network capacity based on the demand, scale up, scale down. So that's another thing. Then the compute itself. So the automation of that entire thing, where the AI data center can if there's a problem in compute and server access and the stack itself, it's doing that in an automation way. But if it does through AI, it'll be way more better. So basically, letting AI run AI data center, that would be rather more.
And maybe to Sunita and Dr. Fadi, any observations on how far are we from that fully autonomous, self-healing data centers? I know there's a lot of optimization in the operations of data centers. Where do you see that from where we stand today in the MENA region?
Okay, I think we are a little bit far away, just frankly speaking. Look, data centers, we are the digital backbone, right? And I think it starts with having the right components in place, which I moved to this region 1.5 year ago. I've spent a lot of time in Asia. I've spent time in Europe. I've spent time in Latin America. So I look at it from a little bit a
Yeah.
global point of view. And look, the first thing is that if you really want to build a strong digital backbone, which we are, because everything that Razwan just mentioned, it's running in data centers,
Yeah.
right? But if you don't have the strong foundation, everything will collapse. So, for example, from my observation today, is that there are 5 enablers, in my opinion, that we will need to take care of. The first one, again, is land and power. Because automation, like in the past, cloud adoption, right? After COVID, cloud adoption accelerated really, really fast. A lot of companies realized, oh, we cannot work from home. We cannot do a lot of things. So you saw a spike in that.
Yeah.
But that required the backbone, which is us, the digital backbone, to house all these computing powers, as well as, of course, the softwares, all these systems. So today, with everything that's going on, one of our biggest issues today is the availability of power. We are way, way behind in this region, and I think I mentioned that earlier in one of my first question is around, look, if you look at some tier 1 markets, they can do it in a way shorter time than what we do to build the power infrastructure, than what we do here in the region. And maybe not UAE or Saudi, but specifically when I look at Qatar, we have to be able to pre-position ourselves when it comes to the growth. And automation will come, because if we cannot provide the foundation,
Absolutely.
how will automation come, right?
I agree.
And the second thing is around connectivity. You spoke about connectivity. We need strong world-class connectivity. And what does it mean? It means subsea cable diversity, terrestrial fiber expansion, and also interconnection from carrier neutrality, because that will ensure that we avoid any single point of failures, as well as cutting and providing low latency. So the cross-border connectivity is also key. And then everything around data sovereignty, right? Data governance and compliance. Data sovereignty is important. Cross-border digital policy. So I look at it from, we need to build the foundation, and then we can build on top of that. People are selling all the solutions, but where will it run? We have constraint when it comes to deliver these services. Just today, we are not fast enough when it comes to securing power. Also, permitting, right? Permitting is, we need to expedite permitting processes here. In certain countries, it takes maybe 1 or 2 months. Here, it can take way longer. So that means there's a huge, huge delay. And look, I'm just putting it as it is. I don't want to mention that it's all.
No, absolutely, and I think there's
yes, exactly.
There's some challenges.
Yes, there are challenges, and I think go ahead.
And this is where I think, look, there's a lot of strong foundations that the MENA and Qatar are building on, and there's a lot of, maybe to wrap up some of the discussions, there's a lot of let's say room for development and key asks. And if you were to just to wrap up, what would be the one ask that you would have for either policymakers or investors alike that would support the huge potential that we see in the region, in Qatar, especially as data centers are really the core enabler for all the, not just the digital competitiveness, but the national competitiveness. So maybe just one bold ask from each one of you as we wrap up this this session.
Sure.
Look, for me, it's I would like to ask the policymakers to treat data center as a critical infrastructure asset, and provide critical infrastructure fast-track protocols. When it comes to dedicated, pre-committed power, when it comes to, I already mentioned that, expediting permitting, as well as what I see is around renewable energy. Right here today, we are not allowed to self-generate, which is a key ask globally. So I'm just asking policymakers to recognize what's already working in other countries.
Yeah.
And that's how we can
Absolutely.
scale region-wide.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Fadi.
I was expecting Sunita to talk about manpower as well.
You can
Oh.
And
talk.
I was
You
going
can-
to
it's
move on to
yours.
something else.
Go to manpower is already something else.
Look, I think it's a global challenge, but one thing that we can do in this part of the world, and especially in Qatar, it's a very attractive place to live and raise a family. I think we should build on that and you know, turn us into a magnet for critical infrastructure talent. We need help with the talent. It's costly and it's hard to compete with, you know, the region or New York or elsewhere in the world. So we need that help would go a long way. But I would finish off with special tariffs. So if we designate data centers as critical national infrastructure pieces, right? They're critical for the country's own sovereignty, digital sovereignty, and they are a great economic pillar, right? That we want to invest in because this would diversify the economy, like, you know, an opportunity that wasn't there 2 years back. So the world is attracted to the region, attracted to the Qatar because we've got excess power, and it's a good differential for the rate. However, as the world turns on more nuclear energy, more renewable energies to power data centers, that differential is not going to stay long. So we need our friends in the relevant authorities to think with us. How do we put these tariffs in place that will continue to make Qatar and the region a very attractive place for them to come and host their data centers?
Absolutely. I think it's a key.
Can I
one of the
ask
key
too?
enablers. You can put a watch list.
I've
Yeah.
got a couple of asks coming, to be honest. So, okay, the first one is on your point. So, self-healing Gulf ring, actually, MENA ring. So, basically, low latency self-healing connectivity across the data centers. That's the first ask that I'd put in front of the policymakers. So, like, we get better connectivity and we get better sort of like disaster recovery sites as well. This is one. The second ask is around having an AI data center framework MENA-wide. If sovereign AI, if I may put it correctly, sovereign AI data center framework for MENA. And we can have different jurisdictions working together on what data to retain within the country, what data to like that can be shared around. Purely from my perspective, this is what I would be rather looking at, because in the end, it's not about if we're going to get there. Yes, we will get there, but it's how fast we're going to get there.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, otherwise, the drain is going to shift somewhere else, and we will lose the game. So that's all I would ask.
And I think this is where the raising the DC, it takes an ecosystem and it takes collaboration, not just from one country but also across all the different countries. There's a lot of potential in DCs in the region to make it global, not just a regional data hub. You've heard it from our great panelists, so I'd like to thank our panelists for
Thank
joining
you.
us and these great insights, and thank you all for joining. Enjoy the rest of MWC.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.